You shouldn't be worried about the U.S. stock market in the face of rising competition from China and AI developments. Historical resilience, robust corporate earnings, and a booming tech sector are all indicators that the U.S. market is poised for strength. With the S&P 500 showing consistent growth and analysis projecting a bullish trend and SPY hitting new all-time highs this past week, there's plenty of reason to be optimistic. Sit tight, dive in, and let's take a listen to what Dan Ives has to say about DeepSeek and the current market situation.
All right, well, the market's lost in deep thought over DeepSeek's claims that it built an AI model in just a couple of months for less than $6 million. Not a B, $1 million. It's a tiny fraction of what U.S. companies are spending on artificial intelligence build-out. Most of the pressure is hitting Nvidia, as Kelly points out. But Scale AI CEO Alexander Wang told Squawk Box just last week from Davos that the Chinese startup has more Nvidia chips than it's willing to admit.
My understanding is that DeepSeek has about 50,000 H100s, which they can't talk about, obviously, because it is against the export controls that the United States has put in place. And I think it is true that, I think they have more chips than other people expect, but also on a go-forward basis, they are going to be limited by the chip controls and the export controls that we have in place.
All right, so with that in mind, are the doubts around the AI trade justified, or is today's sell-off just a buying opportunity for some of these names? Joining us for more is Dan Ives, the global head of technology research at Wedbush. Also here with us for the whole hour is Nancy Tengler, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Laffer Tengler Investments. Thank you both for being here with us right now. Let's talk about, Dan, the epicenter of all of this. And you've been a notable bull on many of these companies, many of the technologies that are at the center of the meltdown today. Does this worry you?
I mean, in my view, it's a top 3 buying opportunity that I've seen in the last decade for tech. And the reason I'm saying that, I spent the whole weekend talking to tech executives, CIOs, individuals that I know that are going down the sort of AI arms race or going through use cases. In no way of really 25 companies does this change their sort of plans, and a lot of these could be 7, 8, even upper 8-figure type budgets. I just continue to view this as it's a model, and a lot of the details I think still need to be vetted out in terms of 6 million. Do they actually have the H100s, how they actually built it? But this is something we're going to look back on, and I think the street and the market got this way wrong. In no way does it dent our bull thesis. That's what we've been telling clients really since the weekend. These are the times you own these names.
Dan, not all of the companies at the center of the sell-off today are necessarily affected the same way. Mm-hmm. Chip stocks, Nvidia, Kelly mentioned it, $500 billion in market cap lost. That's more than the size of ExxonMobil. That's roughly the size of United Health Group in terms of an entire company lost in market value. Some are affected more than others. Mega cap technology, not as much so across the board as, say, Nvidia per se. When this is a buying opportunity, how much of a buying opportunity and how specific do you have to be?
Well, first on Nvidia, that continues to be, I think, the golden goose in terms of what Jensen and that company are ultimately. There is one chip in the world. There's one GPU that's fueling AI, and it's Nvidia. And when you think about these build-outs, when we talk about the enterprise, the $2 trillion of AI CapEx next 3 years, that doesn't change from DeepSeek. We're talking about 1/1000th of ultimately the build-out that you're going to need for a lot of these enterprise use cases. You look at names like Palantir, you look at the hyperscalers. I could argue with inferencing, if you actually think costs are coming down, it's actually bullish for even some of the software players, names like Salesforce, ServiceNow, Oracle, and others. I just think this is when you look at NVIDIA, I think we sit here 6, 9, 12 months from now and look at this as a moment. It was a golden buying opportunity, and in no way changes our bull thesis for where this is all headed.
So you heard what Dan Ives had to say. The big takeaways right here are China and DeepSeek cannot come close to the United States in AI endgame. Number 2, no Global 2000 will use DeepSeek to launch AI infrastructure. And number 3, today's sell-off is a golden buying opportunity for tech. Before we jump into all the details on DeepSeek and what's going on with the market and what Dan Ives had talked about, I have a huge announcement. My free masterclass webinar this Friday, January 31st, 8 p.m. p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. You don't want to miss it. Link is in the information box below to register right now. Very limited spots. I have a huge announcement you don't want to miss. I also will have a Q&A, so you guys will be able to ask me any questions. Remember, very limited spots remain, and every student that's ever attended said they learned more with me in the 1 hour than they did anywhere else. I'll see you guys there. Dan Ives says that this is a buying opportunity, and I completely agree with him. DeepSeek's bombshell claim of dirt cheap, world-class artificial intelligence rig blew a $600 billion hole in Nvidia's market cap value yesterday. America's confidence in its AI lead over China seems to have vaporized. The DeepSeek news came 2 weeks after the outgoing Biden administration tightened controls on computer chip exports. The Trump administration hasn't said if it'll implement a new control. Students of strategic technology say that the protection efforts shouldn't be discarded. They should be better enforced, and firms like Microsoft and Meta Platforms should continue investing to maintain America's AI edge. I don't think this means that the export controls failed, says Martin Korzempa, a tech security researcher at the Washington, D.C. based think tank, Peterson Institute for International Economics. It means controls are even more important and need to be better enforced. AI pioneers like OpenAI and Alphabet's Google developed their leading-edge AI models on clusters of more than 10,000 Nvidia chips, which cost billions. DeepSeek says it spent $5.6 million for a couple of thousand of the dumbed-down version of Nvidia chips available for export under controls issued by the Biden administration in 2022 and 2023. DeepSeek claims on its development costs are impossible to verify. Some suspect that it had access to data centers in China equipped with large numbers of advanced Nvidia chips. Controls on critical technology are enforced by the Commerce Department and Bureau of Industry and Security. That enforcement arm is under-resourced, Korzempa says, which leaves it ill-equipped to track the covert trading networks that help China circumvent U.S. control on advanced chips and the gear that make them. The Bureau of Industry and Security tightened controls on military critical chips in December of 2024, and then again in January of 2025, just 5 days before Trump's inauguration. It's all too soon to tell whether the Trump administration will implement those controls on advanced chips, says Jeffrey Gertz, an expert on controls with the Center for a New American Security think tank in Washington, D.C. He thinks that Trump will. Gertz notes that Republicans in Congress have long complained that Commerce should better enforce the export controls. The Biden administration did well in creating these controls, Gertz says. Now that the Republicans are in power, I hope they allocate more resources to carry out this work. Yet controls aren't enough to maintain America's lead in AI or in any other scientific field. While DeepSeek may have built an impressive model on the cheap, the leading edge of AI still seems to require massive investments like the Stargate project announced last Tuesday by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank, or the 1.3 million processor clusters teased by Meta's Mark Zuckerberg on Friday. Expert controls by themselves are not a remedy for keeping the U.S. lead in advanced AI, says Gertz. And in my opinion, Intel, AMD, specifically Nvidia, like Dan Ives had said, Palantir, Oracle, all great stocks to buy. And in my opinion, it's very hard for China to compete with the United States on this level because China is going to be pretty much barred and tariffed and or banned from exporting their EV vehicles, which has already happened in European Union, as well as the United Kingdom and the United States and North America, which the same thing would just follow with AI. And we would just basically not use them at all, which puts a damper on their ability to really make any money in AI. And we already saw what happened with Unix back in the 90s and into the 2000s, an open source operating system. Linux tried to take their stab at it because of the money and the tech. Apple created their operating system OS, which took advantage of that open source, and nobody has been able to do anything with it, at least nowhere near the likes of Apple. China's stock market has long been subject of scrutiny, with numerous allegations of inflated earnings, misleading claims from corporations listed on its exchanges. For instance, a report by Muddy Waters Research in 2019 highlighted how various Chinese companies have artificially inflated their revenue numbers, raising red flags for investors. A 2021 study revealed revealed that nearly 20% of Chinese firms listed on the U.S. stock exchanges were suspected of financial fraud, leading to increased calls for stricter regulations and audits. Moreover, DeepSeek Analytics have shown that a significant number of these companies lack transparency in their financial reporting, often presenting data that does not align with their actual economic activities. As a result, investors need to approach Chinese stocks with caution, recognizing the potential for discrepancies between reported earnings and the true financial health. This is a report that is very important to understand too, because we can't really believe everything or most things that we hear coming out of China. They pumped and dumped Alibaba earnings in the past. Look at NIO as an example. This is kind of a history repeats itself scenario. I would not be really concerned about the stock market right now. It's a buying opportunity, like Dan Ives said, and everything will be okay. The market recovered 60 to 80% of its overnight drop on Sunday yesterday, and today it's going to be even better with the Magnificent Seven earnings coming up over the next week or two. So things are definitely shaping up to pretty much be a full recovery, and we're on to the bull run for 2025, and everything looks great. This is a buying opportunity, just like Dan Ives says. Do not panic. Woosah, breathe. Everything will be okay. So I guess based on everything I just said, is it really DeepSeek AI or is it Deep State AI? No, it's DeepSync AI. It's typical. We don't even know what we're dealing with when it comes to China. Don't forget, guys, my full masterclass webinar this Friday, January 31st, is going to be 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Very limited spots remain. Link is in the information box below. You guys don't want to miss it. I will see all of you guys on the next video or upload. Take care of yourselves.